Hello, hello, and welcome. I am Web Weaver, and I'm so glad that you have found my channel here today. So, this video is part of my Wheel of the Year series that I'm working on, where I spend time talking about each of the Sabbats in the Wheel of the Year. So, if you need more information on the Wheel of the Year in general, I do have a video made about that. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll find a playlist that's titled Wheel of the Year, and that will give you an overview of all the Sabbats and all the things that I'm talking about in these videos. Today, I'm going to talk to you specifically about the autumnal equinox, which is also commonly known as Mabon, but I will explain the naming situation here in just a minute. So, during the autumnal equinox, and I do have my notes here so that I stay on track, the Earth's axis is not tilted toward the sun, nor is it tilted away from the sun. So on this day, the sun rises directly in the east, it sets directly in the west, and at noon at the equator, it's directly overhead, and the day and night are equal length or just about equal length. So, depending on where you're located, the equinox can actually take a couple days to complete, but harvest time is not just one day either. So it works out that it's a period of days. But from this point on, no matter where you are, the nights will start to get longer. So the date for the autumnal equinox always varies a little bit depending on when the sun enters Libra, but it always falls between September 21st and 24th. So the autumnal equinox, if we're looking at the wheel of the year, this Sabbat is located in the west on the wheel of the year. This is the Sabbat that moves us from the light half of the year to the dark half of the year. This is the second harvest festival. So Lammas was the first, and I did make a video for Lammas for the first. So this is our second harvest festival, and this one focuses a lot on apples and vegetables and squashes and things like that. Spiritually, the second harvest is when we focus on our appreciation and our gratitude for the lessons that we've learned and the harvest that we are reaping from this past year. But we're also starting to look toward the last bit of harvesting that we have to do before Samhain and determining what does not serve us and what is going to be left behind in the fields at winter. So let's talk a little bit about the name of this Sabbath. So the autumnal equinox has been celebrated throughout the world since ancient times, but it was not called Mabon until the 1970s. So here's a brief rundown of what happened. A man named Aidan Kelly, who was an initiate of Wicca, chose the name in 1974. So he was making a pagan calendar of sabbats and planetary movements and things like that. And he noticed that the four fire festivals had Celtic or Gaelic names. So Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, Samhain, and that the solstices and equinoxes did not, save for Yule. Yule was the only one. So when he went about naming those other sabbats, he chose Mabon for the autumnal equinox. And he took that name from the Welsh Mabinogion. There was a character in there named Mabon who was saved from the underworld by Gwydion. So Aidan Kelly, for himself, was able to make a connection between Mabon, a character in this myth, and the Greek myth of Persephone entering the underworld at the autumnal equinox. So he chose the name Mabon and he gave it the name Mabon in the 1970s. Some pagans prefer to call the Sabbat the autumnal equinox. Others prefer Mabon, while others may use more specific names for their cultural preferences. And we'll talk about some of those here in just a few minutes. But as an aside, when you're deciding what name feels right or what you want to call it, when it comes to paganism and witchcraft, there's no dogma, there's no overarching rules. You can choose what name you call any celebration that you create and you hold, any ritual you perform. You can give it a name. There is an argument for using names that have been used historically. So if for 100 years people have been practicing this and calling it the autumnal equinox, there is energy in that that has been raised throughout all those years of its usage. Um, and it almost creates like an egregore of sorts, meaning that combined built up energy is there for you to use. But Mabon has been around since the 1970s, so it has also built up its own energy. And I can guarantee you that ancient people celebrating what we call the autumnal equinox did not call it that. So um, it's not necessary to use names unless they feel right to you. So that said, let's talk about the celebration. So one of the ancient connections, one of the most well-known ancient connections to the autumnal equinox is the Greek Eleusinian mysteries. I may have mispronounced that, and if I did, I apologize. What we know about this ritual, we know through very limited sources, mostly archaeology. We know that even parts of the ritual itself was kept secret from participants, so um, we can't be 100% certain of what happened throughout the entire ritual. So the basis of the ritual was the tale of Demeter and Persephone. And in this story, Persephone was taken to the underworld by Hades, and her mother Demeter could not find her. And when she found out what had happened and that Persephone had been taken, she decided she was no longer going to allow anything to grow in the world. Well, Zeus had to step in because people were going to die without being able to grow anything. So a compromise was reached. Persephone was not able to just leave the underworld because she had eaten of the pomegranate seeds, but she was able to come back to the world, the upper world, um, for a time each year and then would return to the underworld. So during the dark half of the year, we are now returning to the underworld in Persephone's story. Um, the Eleusinian Mysteries festival celebrated this time of year, and it was held every 4 years. It would last over a week, and it was considered to be of great importance. Another common celebration that's tied to the autumnal equinox or Mabon was the Harvest Home Festival, which was also known as Ingathering. And this was in Europe. It was a harvest festival that combined the work of reaping. Harvesting the food is a lot of work. So this festival turned that work into games and fun to make it a little easier to tolerate. Um, at the end of the harvest, a feast would be held. And once Christianity started to spread throughout Europe, a lot of times the names of saints important to the area or the time of year would be given to these festivals. So one example of that is Michaelmas, named for St. Michael, which was held on September 29th. Some other names for the autumnal equinox include Albin Elfid in the Druid system. Heathens call it winter finding. The Celtic pagans call it the Feast of Avalon. So there are several, right? Um, Other festivals that are tied more to the harvest and less to the equinox itself include Harvest Festival in the UK, which still occurs, the Zinki in Poland. I may have mispronounced that, and I'm Polish. I'm sure my ancestors are rolling. And Oktoberfest in Germany, which has also spread elsewhere. I know that here in the United States there are um, Oktoberfest celebrations that occur because of the German heritage. So, no matter what you call it, this is the second of three harvest festivals. with Lammas or Lunasa having been the first. So while Lammas is focused on grains, Mabon focuses on the fruits and the veggies and the apples and the gourds and things like that. Mabon is a modern name for this holiday, but the autumn equinox is when our ancestors would have been bringing in the harvests, finishing up the necessary work, preserving that harvest in order to survive the winter. The fruits and the vegetables would need to be dried or otherwise preserved in order to be kept during the colder months. In modern times, we use the autumnal equinox to celebrate our personal harvest. So, having done the work of the year, now is the time to reflect on that work and claim our harvest. So, we know that we have a short time left before Samhain, so we take stock of what we've brought in, what we still need to bring in, and what we need to wrap up before we celebrate the Samhain festival, the end of the old year, beginning of the new. So, just as temperatures start to drop at this time of year, the days grow shorter, we kind of feel the energy mellowing, right? It's not the heat of summer with all of that passionate energy. Things are mellowing, things are calmer. There's this growing desire to look inward, to turn inward, and to sit quietly in nature. That's why I'm out here today in contemplation. So, if you're going to celebrate the autumnal equinox, there are some things you can do that are done by many others at the time. Baking apple pies or apple treats of some sort, focusing on the theme of balance. This year at our equinox celebration, we had scales set up, and it's been a rough year for many people. So, we put um, dark glass beads on one side symbolizing the struggles of the year. And then we came up with blessings to balance or even tilt the scales in favor of the blessings after we finished our feast. So that is an idea of something you can do to celebrate the festival. Hosting a Thanksgiving style dinner. This is often called a pagan Thanksgiving. So having a dinner where you invite guests over and you hold some kind of Thanksgiving themed activity. You can also do fall cleaning, just like spring cleaning. We're getting ready to go into the winter season. Windows are going to be shut. We're going to be inside with the heater on, furnace on, and we're going to be closed in for a while. So maybe airing out the house, cleaning things up, just like you do at spring cleaning, would be a good thing to do before winter kicks in. You can also do things like donating to local shelters or food banks. If you're with a spiritual group, maybe make it so that it's from that spiritual group, or you can just put your local witch or local pagan or whatever to put that out there, or you can just do it anonymously, however you would like. But you could make some donations since winter tends to be a difficult time for many of the shelters. So, those are just some ideas for celebrating Mabon. I hope you've enjoyed this look into the celebration of the autumnal equinox. I do have in my description below a list of resources where you can find out more about this Sabbath, about other Sabbats, about the Wheel of the Year, about modern witchcraft in general. If you have any other traditions or sources that you use, feel free to drop them in the comments. That's perfectly fine. Sharing is caring, right? And I hope that you have a wonderful Mabon season. Remember, it is a season, so if you didn't get a chance to celebrate it right at the day, we're still in Mabon season. We are in Samhain tide because we're moving towards Samhain. But bake that apple pie, hold that Thanksgiving dinner, whatever it is you want to do. But I hope you have a blessed Mabon season, and I will see you at Samhain.